Hey guys, what's up? It's Terry here at Switzerville Sound Retreat. Today we're doing part 2 of our Pro Tools Kickstarter. If you haven't watched the last video, I recommend you check that out if you don't have Pro Tools installed yet. We installed the free version, which is called Pro Tools Intro, and it just identifies some of the weird little things that happens while you're installing the software. This video picks up where that left off, where we're going to be basically starting with the blank page of Pro Tools, getting some sound in and recording and simple navigation and the number one things you need to know right away to get moving on making some music. And we're going to quickly try and expedite to getting your rough idea exported. So it's basically as fast as we can get from opening Pro Tools and not knowing anything to knowing at least the range of things that need to happen to navigate, record audio, and then get something exported. Before we do anything, we're going to install just a couple of things, so let's dive in. Okay, so if you remembered last video, we installed Avid Link. Again, if you haven't checked out that video, I recommend that you do that. So we have Avid Link here, which can be shown from this icon. Make sure you're signed in and go to your products page, and then under Pro Tools, it'll have the drop down of included apps and plugins. Let's move down the menu here to expand. Make sure this is installed. Now it looks like I haven't even installed it yet myself, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay guys, we have that installed now, and I'm just relaunching Pro Tools. Okay guys, so here's the splash screen. It might look a little bit different if you're on an older version of Pro Tools. So I'm going to type in the name of this project. It's going to be called Test, and this is where you're going to navigate to where the project is going to live. And I can't say I'm a huge fan of this. I like the way it was done previously, but click this drop down, click Browse, and select where you want it to go. If you're just starting out, I would say Documents folder, and then even creating a new folder called Pro Tools Sessions, and we can just stick it in there. If I'm doing anything with music, I'm usually going to do a 44.1 sample rate. Bit depth 24-bit is fine. I/O settings, we will get into this later, but for now you probably should be okay to just leave that as it is, especially if you're just firing up the software for the first time. And if you're not, I'll show you a way to sort of reset it shortly. We're not going to be creating from any template. We want to just start from scratch so you know what's going on from the ground up. So let's create that project now. Okay. I'm going to stretch out my window here. Okay guys, here is the main edit window. And then if you go up to Window and click Mix, this will be your mixing window. And you can make that large if you want to. Now there's nothing there because we don't have any tracks yet. So back to Edit. This is where I do most of my work anyways. I really don't spend too much time in the mix window anymore. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just make sure that we're going to be interfacing properly with our audio interface, so that when we plug in a guitar, it's going to get that signal, and when we press play, it's going to actually output audio. So we're going to head up to Setup and Playback Engine. And right here is where you're going to select your interface. Now, if you're not working on any interface, say a Focusrite 2i2 or anything like that, you're probably going to select your Mac built-in audio. There could be Mac headphones, or in this case, the Mac Studio speakers, which you might have a little set of desktop speakers. So you should see that in here. Obviously, if you're working with something like that, you're not going to be able to plug any audio in. So I recommend a small interface. Hardware buffer size, very important. This is something we do need to talk about. If you're tracking anything, try to stay as low as possible. 128 is good. I find there's not many glitches that are going to happen. And when you're doing mixing stuff and adding more plugins and giving the computer more processing load, you're going to want to increase to the highest sample count. Quickly, I'll say what this is. It's essentially the amount of samples that the computer will hold before spitting it back out to the speakers. So the more samples it can buffer, the more processing and the more intense processing it can do, but at the cost of latency, which is you playing your guitar and hearing this really weird delay, almost like it's coming a half a second later. It's very distracting. But when you're in 128, you can play the guitar and it pretty much sounds like, you know, you're playing the guitar out of an amp. There is an exception to that, which we will get into after. But this is what you need to know. Low sample count, 128 for recording, high sample count for mixing. Dynamic plug-in processing, that's a new feature that has come out recently. I have it on. I usually keep these unchecked, and I usually keep this stuff unchecked. This is stuff that can be tried if your system isn't working well, and some people have luck with them on and some people have luck without these settings on. So try this to start. Disk playback, this is your disk cache. You don't really have to worry about that. It's just going to work basically. This is kind of where you can allocate a certain amount of RAM to store audio on the timeline. So it's not reading from hard disk, it's actually reading from the RAM itself. But with hard drives so fast now, I'm not sure how effective this is, but I keep mine at 5. The next thing you want to do, we're going to come up to Setup and I/O. Now this is where if you have, let's say, a Focusrite 2i2 interface, it's going to have 2 inputs and it's going to have 2 outputs. That's it. The rest of this is just a very large interface. And then you're going to have buses, which can be created within the session. And there's also a bus to map to the main hardware, to your main output basically. So you need a bus to path itself out to the main output. Now, the best thing to do if you're just starting out is go to all these tabs. So input and click default, output and click default, and bus and click default. And if it says any kind of error message, just proceed. This is going to totally clean up any I/O weirdness that's going on. It's going to read what Playback engine is currently installed, and it's only going to show you those inputs and outputs. So likely if you're working with a 2-channel interface, all you're going to have is analog 1 and 2 for inputs. Okay, so the next thing is just some preferences we should set. So let's go to Setup again and Preferences. Now we want to go to the Processing tab, and this is so important. You want to click Automatically Copy Files on Import. This is huge because it's not checked by default. And what happens is new users will get on, start making a song, and then they want to send it to somebody or take it somewhere else, and all of a sudden they can't find their files. Well, that's because if you don't check this box, Pro Tools will just source the file from where it's sitting. So if you brought something in from your downloads folder, it would just be looking at the downloads folder. It wouldn't actually copy it into the session. That's what we want. We want to build a self-contained file that is portable. So what would happen is if you gave the session to somebody else and you had the full folder, but you didn't have this checked and you had taken audio from different sources on your computer, you would get we're missing files, we need to relink them. It's a mess. So click this. That's a huge one. One more thing I like to set in Pro Tools, and I find that is very important, is the function keys. So if you are on Mac And I don't believe this is going to be an issue on Windows. But you want to go to your Mac settings and you want to go to function keys. Type that in the search bar, click function keys. And when this comes up, you want to make sure this box is checked because Pro Tools uses these function keys. They're very important. And if this setting is not enabled, which is using those F keys as standard function keys, they're not going to work in Pro Tools. They're going to do the things that Mac OS wants them to do, which is fast forward, rewind. You definitely want to get that setting checked. And we want to make sure that this is also checked. So you're going to notice there's a little A to Z here, and one here. These are all different. This is the one you want checked. And I will tell you why that's being checked very shortly. It's called keyboard focus. It makes navigating in Pro Tools so much faster. So first thing, I want to set my main counter to bar and beats. It probably already is. For me, I was working in a film project, so I had it set to time code. So we're in bars and beats. This is your best friend. This is called the selector tool. And this helps you get around very quickly. So the selector tool is my main tool for moving around, because with the hand tool, I could be accidentally grabbing things. This is the steering wheel of Pro Tools to me. And now we're going to talk about keyboard focus mode that we just put Pro Tools into and set the Mac keys for the standard function keys. Basically, now a whole bunch of Pro Tools key commands are one single key rather than Command V for paste or Command C for copy. Now it is simply C for copy or V for paste. There's a bunch of other commands that follow this as well. So to navigate, R is to zoom out and T is to zoom in. Now this will make more sense when I actually have some audio in here, but R and T, get used to those. They are your friend. On my left hand, my third finger is on the R and my middle finger is on the T. That's where I plant my fingers to start getting around. The return key will always bring you back to the start. Spacebar plays. Now to record, if you have a full keyboard with the side numeric keypad, the number 3 is record. Now we don't have any tracks yet, so we can't actually record, but the number 3 is record. Now if you don't have that right keyboard, you can click record, that's putting it into a record enabled state, and you'll be pressing play. But again, we need a track up, and we're going to make that right now. Let's go track, new, and let's make one audio track. Let's call it guitar. I do have a guitar plugged in over here, so one mono audio track. Now we've got the track, and let's talk about some of the features of this. Now you can click anywhere up here mostly, but if you right click through here, you're going to bring up this menu, and this is where you can show and hide the different functions of a track. Comments. Let's just go over the track quickly. We have record enable. So now if I was to hit 3, I'm actually recording. I don't have any audio coming through yet. And then there's a region. So you can see how we're blowing up and backing off with the R and the T keys. Okay, so we have our record enable button, solo, and mute. Now let's create one stereo instrument track. What is an instrument track? An instrument track is basically a MIDI track with a space for plugins and a virtual instrument. A regular MIDI track doesn't have any of that. It just records and transmits and or receives MIDI data. That's it. Where this makes it more convenient because I'm going to be able to pull up our expand plugin. So if we go to inserts, now we're going to talk about the insert panel. This is where your plugins sit. And again, you have to show and hide these things. So if you don't see them, right click up in here and show inserts. We've got 10 slots, A to E, F to J. So we're going to click the slot, multi-channel plugin. We're going to go down to instrument, and you won't see too many things here, but find expand. And here's expand. This records MIDI. Now you see you've got these note blocks rather than audio waveforms. Now, one important thing we have to talk about are the edit modes. Grid mode follows the grid of whatever time is set. So we have bars and beats as our main counter, obviously. That is a bar. Now, if we come up here, now this is where you can turn the grid on and off. And then if you come over here, you can decide what resolution the grid is going to be in. Now, if we just go to a bar, this is now just selecting bar by bar. So that was one bar that we just recorded in MIDI there. But often we want to see more resolution, eighth notes. Right? Having said that, let's go in and create a click track. Track, create, click track. A lot of DAWs have the metronome built right in. Pro Tools does it this way. So there we just did 3 bars of MIDI. That's eighth notes. If you want to go 16ths, you'll see now you could get into if you want to get into some more of that style hi-hat editing, and you're going to need to see more resolution in the beats. So again, I'm navigating in and out with R&T. I'm in grid mode currently. Now let's talk about slip mode, the other important mode. And that is basically free mode. So you can see I'm no longer constrained to the grid, which is really good for precision editing. And shuffle, we can just cover quickly. Basically, if you select a piece and delete, it actually closes the gap. And if I copy and paste something and insert it, it makes room for it. If you delete something, it closes the gap. If you paste something in, it pushes what's to the right of it further down the line to make room. Spot mode, we'll talk about that later. And there's 2 grid modes, but just worry about the regular grid mode for now. And again, if you get on this one, it still operates the same way, but there's another level to it that we're not going to get into right now. Make sure we're on the classic blue grid mode. Here's some other tools. The trimmer, very important. Trim in, you've probably seen this on different video softwares. Now this is a part of Pro Tools with the MIDI they're actually fixing right now. You would think that note would go away. They're actually in the process of coming out with that update next. Now, if we move this to a notes view, you can see that that's where you would trim that MIDI note in and out. I'm just going to turn this into audio quickly so that we can play with some audio here for a second. Back to the trimmer tool. And slip, as you can see, I can get right in there and do what I need to do to make precise audio edits. Now the grabber tool, you can grab things and move it around. And if you're in grid mode, same thing, you can move by grid. Now, one thing you need to be careful about is there's 3 modes, actually 4 modes for the trimmer and 3 modes for the grabber. So if you end up seeing the scissors or the object, you'll probably get screwed up. So just make sure that it's just the hand you're seeing. With the trimmer, this is a time expansion and compression trimmer now with the clock symbol. So it's actually going to time stretch or compress audio. So I can make that smaller or bigger. Probably going to sound really weird, but you can hear it got all weird, but it's definitely very handy when you need it. That's what that is. And then there's scrub and loop, which to me, they never get used, so we're going to stay away from those. But if you end up on any of these, again, you're probably going to get screwed up, especially the loop trimmer. I can't stand it. I wish I could turn it off. It's easy to hit a key and to end up in another one of these sub modes. We're going to stick with those 3 main tools right now. This is waveform height. So if you click, hold down, and drag up and down, you can increase or decrease the waveform magnification. And the same as the MIDI. You have to be in notes view here. Let's finish up on what's going on in the track. So here's your I/O again. It needs to be shown. And this links back to, if you remember, setup and I/O. Remember, we went to this window and we had our input 1 and 2. Likely that's, if you're starting out, you're going to have a 2-channel interface. You might have 8, whatever you got. So here, I'm going to select the input that I have some guitar in, but you're only going to see likely input 1 or 2, or you might have 8. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to grab the guitar here. So we've got our input here, and we've got our main output. So usually that'll say output 1 and 2. You can rename that stuff by coming into the I/O setup and double clicking and renaming things. But for now, let's keep things simple. You likely want to just get creating some music. Now with Pro Tools Intro, I would recommend, again, on top of Expand, installing whatever they give you in the included apps and plugins. And they're likely going to give you a couple of amps, which are 11 Lite. So we're going to go to Insert, Plugin, Harmonic, and 11 Lite. And I'm pretty sure you get this with Pro Tools Intro. There's lots of free plugins you can start looking for and downloading and trying out, and trialing things. Now we're going to have some distortion. Not a bad rock tone. Then we got a bit of a clean amp, and I'm pretty sure that's all they have is the 2. Yeah, that's it. So that's pretty cool. I might want to add a little spice to that. So if we go to reverb, and I'm pretty sure you almost always get the deverb plugin. So I might want to add some reverb here. So that sounds pretty cool. So I moved that down in the chain, and maybe I want to just add the channel strip plugin. And there might be some settings here that we can try out. Electric guitar. that did a lot for the tone. Got a pretty cool tone going on here. So what I want to do now is show the transport window. So if we open up window and come down to transport. So here's your transport. You basically have a copy of stuff that's happening up at the top of the edit window here. And if you click on this tempo, that when it's highlighted, we're now in a state we could tap that. Now technically I'm tapping eighth notes because it would be, but I like to hear eighth notes. There's another way to do it, but sometimes I just tap it in and that's the tempo. And I know a lot of artists work this way. And I just hit enter. Now I'm in the record mode. And let's just say you don't have the numeric keypad. I'm gonna go into record ready, and then I'm going to hit play when I'm ready to go, and I'll give myself 2 bars. Okay, so I'm going to tap in the tempo again here because it was a little bit too fast when I first tried it, so I just cut that out. I think 138. Enter to come back to 0, into record enable, and I'm going to hit play when I'm ready to go, and I'm going to start recording at bar 3. Okay, not bad, a little sloppy. Okay, not bad. I got rushing it a little bit. So I like that loop, so I'm actually just going to grab that. I'm in grid mode, I'm in selector. I'm just going to grab that 4 bars. I'm going to hit copy, and then I'm actually just going to paste, 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 and now I'm just going to come in and clean up these edits. I'm switching to the trimmer tool with the function keys. So another important feature now that we're here, I can switch between selector, grabber, and trimmer with these function keys, which allows you to navigate quite quickly. So I'm double clicking, I'm zooming in with T, I'm F6 to go to trimmer, then I'm back to selector, and then I'm hitting the F key to fade. I don't want to throw too much at everybody, but that's what's happening. That's not 100%. Let's move that down a little bit. Okay. So I'm just going to check. I put a fade on all these. Okay. Let's check it out. Cool, so we got a good chunk of music there. Got ourselves 16 bars plus an end chord. So now I will throw down a little bit of bass with the MIDI. Now, if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, there is still a way that you can play a MIDI instrument, and that is by coming here and clicking MIDI keyboard, and you can actually play the notes here. So you could actually play them with the mouse if you wanted, and maybe I'll try that right now just for the sake of doing it. Now I'm going to try to find a synth bass, basic reso bass. Let's try that. No, it's not what I'm looking for. Okay, I'm in high octave, so I'm going to move that octave down. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, that's definitely something that I like the best so far. And I might chill the attack a bit. There we go. So I've taken some of the attack off. You can hear it's kind of fading up now. That's a little bit nicer to my ears. So let's try and play with this little MIDI keyboard that's built into Pro Tools. Okay, cool. Now you might be wondering why these letters are weird. You could technically play these on your keyboard. Ideally, you're going to get yourself a little keyboard and be able to intuitively play these notes. Okay, so now we've got some MIDI notes. We're going to clean them up. So we're in grid mode. Let's get up to the MIDI track. Let's name that bass. Let's zoom in. Got to make sure we're in notes mode, because if it looks like this, it means you're in clips mode. So let's get into notes mode. One thing we could do quickly is just double click and highlight everything, and we could hit Q, which is quantize. Which will automatically time up everything. Now, I'm not sure, see, it's set to a 16th note. So we want to set that to an 8th note if this is to work properly. So I'm going to double click all that, and now everything's quantizing to an 8th note. Now I probably want this bass to last. I don't want any pauses. So I'm going to get into my trimmer tool, and I'm just going to drag these to make sure because I had to literally, pick the mouse up and move to another note. And this is where I went up. Did that sneaky G note there. Okay. Trying to just go a bit slower here too, so that now I can make this bigger by right clicking the keyboard and going jumbo. Now I can see everything. There's also a MIDI editor down below. So if I actually click this little arrow here, I'm going to reveal some things at the bottom. You won't see a lot of this. And if I click MIDI editor, and then if I reselect that stuff, now I can, if I click down into here, I'm going to be able to edit the same stuff. But I come down here for certain things, and I stay up here for certain things. The one thing I like about down here in the docked editor, you can see note names now, which is really nice. I wish they would get the note names happening up here as well. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Cool, so we got that. I'm digging that riff. We want to look for, okay, there it is, Avid Loop Master Sample Pack. So go ahead and install that. And I believe it still comes up as install after it's installed because it's not an actual plugin, it's just a pack of waves. Once you've installed that, we're going to go to Window and New Workspace and Default. And we're going to go to Sound Libraries, and then you'll find the Avid Loop Masters pack. You're going to hit the drop down there, and we're going to find a beat for this. Let's first make a stereo audio track, and let's make it in ticks. Now let's also click this button here, which will basically audition any of these files in the session tempo. So let's see if we can find some drum stuff here. What do we got here? Drum loops. Not really the vibe. I think that could work. So let's drag that in. Make sure we're in grid mode. Let's move that over. See what we got. Cool, I'm actually digging that. So let's double click and we're gonna do a C for copy, and then we're gonna do a paste with V, paste with V. Now there's other ways to do this, but I wanna try to keep things simple, like I said. We shouldn't really have to do a fade. Yeah, you won't hear any clip in there. Usually these loops are built so you can cascade them seamlessly and there won't be any audible clip. But you do see Pro Tools has kind of a shadow in there when you don't have a fade. And if I was to come in and do this, see, it won't even let me do a fade because there's no more material underneath there. So here we go. Okay, that's a vibe. It's a cool vibe. I'm actually going to go back to the workspace just to see if we can find, I found that in the chill, I think. To drag that out a bit. Loops, sounds and sound effects, drum kits. I just wanted to find a cymbal. So good enough for now. It's not as elegant as it could be. Technically, I'd put another kick under there. But just so we sound a little bit more finished. Cool, so we pretty much got a track here. Now, here's something you can do. This is in MIDI right now, but if we want to right-click that bass and click Track Commit here, just click OK. That's going to render that to audio, and it's no longer playing as a virtual instrument. It's a baked audio track now. That's pretty much a song. So let's say you've got an idea recorded now. You want to get it out of here. You want to show your friend. You want to show whoever you're collaborating with. One thing we need to do is track, new, stereo, master fader. This means, and weirdly enough, my setup right now is going to like a weird bus, but it should be your main output. So if it's output 1 and 2, this should say output 1 and 2. It's your main output. It's just everything's funneling. Everything is funneling now to this master channel. And this is where you would put a mastering plugin on. So I believe Maxim comes with Pro Tools Intro. So I got a little mastering plugin on there, and you know, you could add some EQ if you wanted to brighten it up. And if you wanted to add a bit of a filter in the bottom, I've engaged that filter and I've increased the slope, and I'll just take a little off the bottom, and I'll do a little smiley face thing around. You can hear that cleaned it up a little bit. Okay, cool. So I think the track's pretty much ready to export. I want to just send it to a friend. Now, if I want them to just listen to it, I probably don't want to export from the top because then there's 2 bars of silence. So I'll probably just select, that's almost 2 on the nose, so I'd come back 1 beat there. And there's an export cycle, and now you're gonna wanna go to File, Export, File, Bounce Mix. Now there's multiple ways to do this now, but we're gonna do it the old-fashioned way. We're gonna call it Test Track. And let's just export to an MP3 for now, because you're just starting out, you might as well just do an MP3. Talk about some of this in a later video. And we're going to choose the directory of where that's going to go. I'm just going to put it on the desktop. And I think I'm ready to export the track. And then the metadata window will come up. I don't put anything in there, so. Perfect. And if we navigate to the desktop, here's our test track. Let's talk about the session structure quickly. Wherever we put that session, which was in Documents, remember we created that Pro Tools Sessions folder, and then here is our session folder. So if we open that up, there's an audio files folder, a bounce files we'll talk about in a later video, clip groups, rendered files, session file backups, which you can basically set in the preferences, which is an operation, auto backup, and I have mine backing up every 2 minutes, and I keep 30 of the most recent session backups. So I'm going to go back to the Finder and video files and wave cache. So that is a proper session. That's what it should look like. Okay guys, so that concludes our Pro Tools Kickstarter episode 2. We have gone from a blank screen to getting audio in, setting some preferences, getting our interface going, creating a little piece of music, talking about the different tools, and exporting our little piece of music. Hopefully this will get you driving a lot quicker, and next video we're gonna discuss probably what I would call the next tier of important must-know things about Pro Tools, but this should get you creating simple pieces of music and get you essentially just asking more questions now. Why? Where do I do this? How do I do this? Now that I know the basic mechanics of what's happening in Pro Tools. Thanks for watching.